15,000 hours of financial education, and we've helped to support small businesses, especially during the pandemic, one of the toughest times that we've seen. More than 16,000 small businesses nationally. So community banks like Carver, we're living out our purpose, which is to be fiercely loyal to our community and very much focused on being local in terms of our approach and our business decisions that we make. Before we jump into introducing our incredible speakers, I also want to take an opportunity to ask the women leaders of Carver Federal Savings Bank, if you're out there, please stand and join me in giving them a big round of applause. I also want to take a quick opportunity to thank H Creative, Harriet Burrell. Harriet, are you out there? Harriet may not be out there, but Harriet, big round of applause. So H Creative has helped us pull this event together. They've done a fabulous job, I think, with some of the information. And then I want to point out that many of the members from the Greater Harlem Chamber of Commerce, women entrepreneurs and leaders, participated in a roundtable discussion before this event, gave us feedback. This was the second annual time that we've done this with GHCC's group of leaders, and it presented an opportunity again for us to hear from these community leaders things that will be important as we think about the year ahead and how we continue to support the things that are important for entrepreneurs and, of course, first-time homebuyers. Now, let's get into the fun and inspiring part that I promised you beyond what I've shared. I would like to introduce our moderator for this incredible event, the incredible Michelle G. Now, if you don't know Michelle G, I would probably say you've been living under a rock somewhere, because she's been doing some pretty impressive things. But you'll certainly have an opportunity to experience the breadth and depth of her contributions from this panel today. Michelle is the president of multicultural advertising for Allen Media Group, which includes Rio Properties and HBCU Go TV. Her team is responsible for growing this critical Black-owned media brand. G has also worked for other powerful media companies, including Ebony and Jet. She's done some work with CNN, A&E. The list truly goes on. Again, an impressive career. Her mission is simple: lead people, transform communities, and drive revenue. G has received honors including Multi-Channel News Wonder Woman, Working Mother of the Year Award, and Ad Color Change Agent Award, and the American Advertising Federation Mosaic Role Model of the Year Award, just to name a few. She's authored 3 books and is sought after as a public speaker. We were very honored to have her be here today for us. She graduated from Golden State University and in 2015 was honored with an honorary doctorate of humane letters. She resides in New Jersey and is the proud wife of husband Tony and honored to be the mom of Taylor and Jordan. So let's get started. Michelle, we're going to turn it to you.
Okay.
I thought I was going to have to come and carry Michael off the stage. How's everyone doing? Everyone's good? It's Tuesday night? All right, well, thank you for having us here. You know, before we get started, I always like to allow people to introduce themselves. I wanted to introduce myself, but I know Michael, I didn't want to take that joy away from him. So I want these amazing women to introduce themselves, but before we do that, I just want to thank Carver Bank. Honestly, I've been in the media business a long time, and my job is to market to people, allow people to tell their stories, and companies and brands that show up in person understand the game. They understand that in order to really connect with somebody, you have to look people in the eye sometimes and not just put an advertisement on television. Don't tell my boss I said that. Okay. So I would love for these amazing women to introduce themselves, Robin and Captain. I can't call you anything but Captain Merchant. And Jessica. So you want to go ahead, Robin, and introduce yourself, please?
Yeah, Yeah, I'll be brief. My name is Robin Madden. I'm a partner at a law firm called Warren Lewis Bacchus. I am excited to be here. At Warren Lewis, I'm the head of the Banking and Financial Services Group. But last but not least, I'm a proud member of the board of Carver Bank. So it's great to be here. I'm looking forward to all the discussions here.
Well, good evening, everyone. Truly honored to be here. Thank you to Carver Bank. Thank you to Ms. G for moderating the panel. I am Captain Zeta Merchant. I am the commander of Coast Guard operations here in New York and New Jersey. In that position, my title is Captain of the Port. I've been in the Coast Guard 26 years, and with this being a women's panel, one of the things that I say throughout my career, I was either the first woman, the first African American, and definitely the first African American woman in most of the positions that I've been in. And just throughout my entire career, I had a lot of leadership lessons and lessons learned, and I look forward to sharing them today. So thank you. All right, ooh, going right up to that. All right, cool. My name is Jessica Spaulding. I'm the founder and CEO of Harlem Chocolate Factory. Harlem Chocolate Factory is a local artisan chocolate brand where we use chocolate to convey the various cultural experiences of Harlem. All that to say, like, we make really, really good chocolate. It's only 3 blocks away. We're Harlem's only chocolate shop and one of maybe 3 Black-owned chocolate companies in the city, and definitely the only artisan chocolate shop. So, just trying to break barriers and do our thing. I also sit on the board of a local nonprofit dedicated to uplifting Black single mothers called the Current Project. And I'm a mom as well, but I'm here today definitely trying not to be intimidated, but I'm going to take confidence as much as I can. But definitely very appreciative to be a part of this.
Captain Merchant, thank you for your service. You know, as I mentioned, my husband's also a JAG officer in the Army Reserves. So a little bit of information. So I'm a little Black girl from Oakland, California. So if I'm not in corporate America, I'm fighting somebody on a street corner. But this conversation is really important today because as we're talking in the background, it doesn't matter if you're an entrepreneur, you're serving in the military, you're in corporate America, oftentimes we find ourselves invisible. And they're like, just raise your hand, but raise your hand where we're not invited to the table when we've earned it. So I believe there's a lot of experience up here. I hope that you garner some of this. I hope you take this. I hope you figure out how maybe you can help us on our journey, if that's where you are in your journey, or vice versa. We're going to talk for a few minutes. There'll be questions. Please feel free to ask questions. And then we're just going to jump in and get started. So I want to just talk about success, right? And what does success mean for you in your journey right now? Robin, you can go ahead and start.
I'm going to go one by one, so I guess I will jump out first. I mean, I think success means, a lot of different things. I think we, sort of did our intros and mentioned, family, which is really important to me, as well as my career. And, most important, I think, is community. Quite frankly, I think part of the reason why I'm able to be here and excited to speak with you all is that I've had a lot of supporters and mentors and sponsors along the way, and a lot of people that have really helped me along. And part of my dedication is to giving back and volunteerism and pro bono activities. So to me, I think it's sort of kind of paving the way. I think a lot of the positions that we sort of see in a lot of the circles, and I feel like one in particular face is based on stereotypes. I think what you see is sort of what you expect and what you get. And I think an important part of success is sort of being a role model and helping those, because I've had a lot of help and support along the way, and I want to get that as much as I can.
So before I want to just jump on the back of that. So what have you had to give up in order to sit in this chair as a partner at a firm listen, I know many women who look like you are not partners at big law firms. So what do you believe you've had to give up in order to hold that seat?
She's alluding to what we talked about in the break room, and it's a very fair comment. I definitely feel like I have definitely, sacrificed a lot of sleep. Especially now, I work in the banking space, and what's going on with Silicon Valley Bank and Signature Bank is no stranger to my day-to-day, so I've just quite a sleepless night lately. But I like to think about the sacrifices I have made to really provided a lot of great opportunities and meaningful moments in my life. So despite probably wishing I had not been to many birthday parties and events, I really do think it's really good to
Yeah, I said that because she was at March Madness with her computer on her lap. She didn't even see the winning shot during the Purdue game. I don't know what game it was, but anyway. So, Captain Merchant, let's talk about self-awareness. And how important it is, right, for anybody to have, but especially in your position where you said you're the first of so many things. Talk about what that is, and then Jessica, I'm probably going to pass the torch to you, ask you the same question as an entrepreneur.
Yeah, for me, self-awareness, often when I talk to people, I say self-awareness is a superpower because a lot of people don't really understand how important it is to be self-aware. And when I think about self-awareness, it's not only just about understanding others, but more importantly, understanding yourself. Being able to control your feelings, your thoughts, and your actions, and being objective about that. And it's almost, I'm overly self-aware to a fault, because it can be one of those things where you're always thinking about how you do things, how maybe this comment or something you did, someone else may have taken that. But for me, self-awareness is one of those things that I have been confronted with from the time that I joined the Coast Guard. For one, I didn't know the Coast Guard existed, but I had a very amazing recruiter in Jackson, Mississippi when I was attending the HBCU, and he approached me about a scholarship program. And of course, focusing on having a job and really a job, because I didn't even think about the Coast Guard as a career, but having a job and money in my pocket. After I graduated, I joined the Coast Guard. I joined the Coast Guard without really knowing what the Coast Guard was, other than my focus, which was biology and marine science. So I say all that to say that I didn't know I was joining a organization that was less than 5% minority. That when it came to African American and specifically women, that the numbers were even lower, or even a industry that is only 2% women holistically. And so I was in for a rude awakening and going to units as well as going to different positions to see that I was the only person that looked like me. And that is still often true, holds true today. And so I have to be self-aware, and sometimes, as you say, some of those burdens that you take on is those stereotypes, and making a point to that you're not feeding into them, but actually eliminating them. Being often the only woman at the table, the only person of the color at the table, I often feel a burden, but I look at it more as an opportunity to break those stereotypes and use self-awareness truly as a superpower to not only know who I am, because I do feel one of the things is know thyself. When you know thyself, anything is possible. And that is my approach to what I do every day and when it comes to self-awareness as a whole.
So self-awareness is definitely a superpower if you're an entrepreneur. Jessica, we had an interesting conversation because it is about knowing yourself, but it's also having peripheral vision and understanding what's out there waiting. Let's talk about what that means for you as an entrepreneur.
Self-awareness is a part of it, right? Like understanding how you're operating and where you're operating from. A lot of the times when you're an entrepreneur, you give yourself the position of CEO. And you need to be aware that that position may not work for your personality. You may work better in a different position. You may work better as a creative director. You may work better in operations. You may not work well in media. You may not work well in these areas, and you've got to know yourself to understand how you're hurting and or just how you're impacting your business so you can offset it. I think self-awareness is one part of it, but the other part in even hearing and understanding this is self-allowance. You have to allow yourself to do the things that you do well, and the more that you try to hold on to different parts of your business, you're gonna sink your ship. No pun intended. But I think it's really, really important for entrepreneurs to kind of balance that out, right? You can't you think that you become self-aware of your weaknesses and then you have to change them. And it's really, really important to not commit to that and recognize that you're building a ship and you have to get people in other positions, right? It's important for me to do the things that I do well. It's not cost effective to my business for me to retrain myself to be an operations manager. Like you asked me when we first met, like, oh, did you hear about that order? No, because I don't handle that part, because if we allow Jessica to do this with my, with my brain and all the things that I'm handling, we'll never get an order out. But when I first started, I called one of my best friends and I said, hey, you're an amazing, like the things you do with events and corporate gifting and the things that you're doing, why don't you stop doing that for them and come do that over here? And, identifying the people who are best for these positions, for the things that I'm aware that I don't do well, is a part of it.
And I think I'm gonna come to you, Robert, I think it takes a lot of honesty, right? And self-reflection and understanding what you're good at and what you're not. And oftentimes we don't wanna admit that, and other people don't wanna tell us, right? Because then there's this whole HR thing. Robert, please.
Yeah, I love this question. I think about it a lot. I think that women and people of color face a lot of institutional barriers. And I think it's important to talk about those too, but I really like the way this question is framed in terms of, no one ever really talked to me about the ways that I held myself back, and I think that comes from the fact that there is a bit of a socialization barrier that exists. One of my favorite quotes from Alice Walker was, we don't realize, what the powers we have and what we've given up, because, sometimes we don't try. I think it's important to talk about the things that exist that are out there. I'm definitely not blaming women and people of color, but I do think we have to understand the power that we have and really focus on using it.
Yeah, I know that one of the books I wrote, I don't remember which ones, I wrote it on the back of the bus. It was a long story, you know that later. But I know I spent 12 years at 3 companies with the same job title because I was searching and looking and not paying attention to the entries, of the barriers of entry. I wasn't paying attention to how people were receiving me, so I was like, Michelle, that's your fault. Because culture needs strategy every single day. And I didn't understand that, and anytime I talk to young women, I'm like, listen, you have to understand how people view you. The other thing I tell people, the most powerful people in the room answer the phones, they sweep the floor, and they deliver the mail because they're invisible to most people, and they know all of your business. And you better be their friends. All right, so let's have some fun. So if there was one adjective that described you, that you want to assign to yourself, because what I also learned is that if you don't assign an adjective yourself, someone will assign one for you. And that's a hard thing as a Black woman to shake off your back, right? So, what's your adjective that you're going to whisper down the hallway or in your business or to the people that give you money that you want them to say, yo, Jessica is so-and-so, because you said it so many times in every email, correspondence, on social media. What's that word?
Oh, right? So many. But I think that it sounds so cliche, but resilient, right? Like, I look at what we've done and what we've been able to make it through. I look to my left, look to my right, and businesses are shutting down all around me. And during the pandemic, the first 3 months, I was on the edge of the seat. Like, okay, is this going to be the day that we have to? And, I'm starting to get emails now of, my friends that are like, oh, sorry, we're shutting down after all these years. And for myself, I think that I don't know how to accept no. And even from myself or from my life. And when the bad times roll, I love figuring out how we're gonna make it past that. And so when people look at this company and look at what we've done and the things that we've been able, we're in an industry specifically meant to keep people of color out from on this side, right? Like the chocolate industry is literally built upon us genuinely staying in the field. It is unheard of for us to be in a position of power around crafting a company like this, and so there has to be resilience. And just aside from getting it done, that we're just gonna make it happen, and I hope that people associate that with me and what I've endured. I grew up in Harlem, and I wasn't in Q Harlem. We've weathered storms and weathering them personally, and I hope that I can be a beacon of hope for people that, your life doesn't only have to look one way for it to have the outcome that you want.
Yeah, and I know you're working on some other things.
Okay?
Yeah.
Every day.
Yeah, I love that. Resilient captain.
All right.
I was gonna go with my command philosophy or like organization philosophy, which is forward, but it's not really about my unit, but I think it's about me, and that word will be determined. And I use that word because I do think of how I got to where I am, and how I even got introduced into the Coast Guard. When I said I grew up in Jackson, Mississippi, I was born in Chicago, inner city, west side, grew up in Jackson, Mississippi, all African American, elementary, middle school, high school, and then I went to HBCU, and then I decided to join this organization that everywhere I go, people like, do you even know how to swim? And I'm like, oh, Lord.
Hey, that's a good question.
Yeah, it is. But that is the first question. Or, the question is, why did you join the Coast Guard? And so, and I say all that because I think it's very important to understand where I came from. I don't even want to say very, gave an amazing home going to my 97-year-old grandmother who was raised in a plantation, worked in the field. My mom worked in the field. My mom and dad only had, 8th grade and 12th grade education. First generation to go to college. Decided to join this organization that looks nothing like me, but based on what they instilled in me, not only did I join the Coast Guard, I've been able to succeed in the Coast Guard. I've gotten 2 masters, a doctorate, fellowships at MIT, Harvard, all because of that determination to, one, be an example and prove to my mother, my father, my grandmother, that what they did and what they didn't do wasn't in vain. I got a lot out of it, and what they instilled in me allowed me to have the passion and determination to be where I am today, in charge of the busiest and the most consequential port in the nation. And so that in itself is something that I'm very proud of, and I would say,
All right, if I ever need to get out of here. If I ever need to get out of here, I know you control the port. I'm gonna be calling you like one of those ships.
that's where the travel is doing.
Ms.
Gosh,
Ryan.
there are always words that I would describe myself, and I think I'm gonna choose one that's not even an adjective. I think I would go with feminist. I'm gonna use the F word, so to speak. I don't know if 20 years ago I would have described myself as that. I might have used sassy or bouncy or something like that, but I really feel like creating equal opportunities for women and men is important. I was really inspired in speaking with women here on this panel in the break room. There are not enough female leaders right now in the community, and obviously a lot of that has to do with institutional barriers and other barriers, but I really do think that it's important in every way, shape, and form to create opportunities for women and men. So being a feminist is something I'm particularly proud of and doing. So
important that we have a word for it, because if you were just to act, you know, your word resilient would be pushy, and determined would be aggressive, right? And a feminist would be, she's just part of that Me Too thing. So I really think it's important to do that. Let's talk about important people. You know, I can think back over my journey, and at 12 years old, I was in Oakland, California. My dad sold cars for a living, but he had this community-based restaurant. And I would have to get up and go help clean chitlins and cook, and oh my gosh, he's like, your salary is getting your hair done. This was just like child labor laws, okay, shit in place. But one thing that I learned from my dad at that time, when people would come in, he would know their name, he would know what they wanted to eat, he would know if they had children, if their wheelchair was, like, he knew every single detail about a person, and he transferred that relationship building skills to me, and he is one of the most important people, and he died at 59, and I made a promise to him when he died of leukemia that I would continue my journey in community and give back and make sure I see people, like really see them. And so that was a gift he gave me, and his memory is undeniable. So who impacted you in a way? What did they give you? And why is that important for people to understand? There is still something that we're continuing to do, and it's because of the shoulders that we stand on. So, Captain Merchant, I'll start with you, since I started with you before.
Well, I think I've already talked about my mother and my grandmother, so with this one, I would go with Dr. Olivia Hooker. She died at the age of 103. She was the first African-American female to join the Coast Guard. And I had the amazing pleasure to be one of her mentors. And so I met her very early in my career, I would say 3 years in my career, and she was just amazing. She was a firecracker. So not only did she get her doctorate in philosophy, actually psychology, but she was the first African-American woman to join the Coast Guard through an effort that Delta Sigma Theta Incorporated, my sorority as well. She was a soror, and they were fighting for women's right to join the military service. Similar to me, she did not have a desire to join the military at all, but she was fighting for these rights. And then at one point she said, how can I fight for a right that I'm not willing to do myself? And so she decided to join the Coast Guard. Well, she actually decided to join the Navy. Navy, of course, denied her entry for obvious reasons, but the Coast Guard actually gave her a chance. And just to read what the recruiters wrote about her, having finished, in college, and they knew what she was doing was trying to not only be a feminist, but break this barrier that needed to be broken, and they were there for it. And so throughout my career, I've had a relationship with her, that continued to inspire me and to be determined to be that example for other people. And it wasn't about me, just like it wasn't about her. It was about the change that you can make. And that's one of her quotes. It's not about me or you, but it's about the change, what we can give to this world. And so even being in the Coast Guard, yes, I'm focused on our mission. I'm focused on making a difference. But my bigger goal is to make an impact, to allow people to see what they can be, other females, other minorities, that there is opportunity there. And that is really one of my main goals, and I got that all from Dr. Olivia Hooker, who again continued to be a trailblazer. She was also one of the living survivors from the Tulsa race riot. So
Wow.
she had an amazing background, and just joining the Coast Guard was one of the many things that she did as a trailblazer.
And what was her title? I mean, what rank did she get to in the Coast Guard?
Well, it was during World War II, and they only allowed women to serve for that particular time.
Okay.
So she ended up being a second-class petty officer as a yeoman. And of course, they only allowed women and African Americans to be in certain rates, so that was a support rate that she was able to serve in World War II.
You know, it's amazing to me that I have never heard that story. And that there is a fight that our history is not even taught in school, right? And we've had to endure so much, and I'm not gonna go on and let you guys speak, but you know, I've done some research, right? Only 2% of African Americans have reached the top levels of corporate America, yet they've had to hone skills that are actually the most admirable skills in order to run a company successfully, because they've had to do so much more, yet those stories are not told, followed, highlighted, they're in no museum, so I don't want to get on my Rosa Parks. Anyway, and I'm just saying.
She was a New Yorker too. So
Oh, wow.
she's buried in White Plains.
That is an amazing story. Who wants to go up to that story?
Right, okay, so it's hard for me because there are two people who had a specific impact on me, especially as I'm
Okay,
here
split up 1 minute each.
to represent entrepreneurship. There was one woman, and we'll start with the woman. She started a business out in Brooklyn, and my mother's friend started a business out in Brooklyn. And this is child labor as well. He had a clothing store, and I was actually a child model, and so sometimes he did live mannequins. So Mashoud now it's an internationally recognized brand, and it was the first, it was like the African spirit, so it was like African inspired clothing. And I used to model in the windows, and then this woman opened this, in her brownstone around the corner, opened this like body hair care line. And my mother and I used to go around the corner all the time and buy her goods. And I watched throughout my life her miraculously turn that into a household brand. And that woman's name is Lisa Price.
Oh, wow.
And going
Carol's daughter.
Carol's daughter, so that's Carol's daughter's brand. And during the pandemic, I was like in a place where I was just so stressed and so confused as to what the next steps were. My business was exploding around me, but also trying to latch on and catch up from 6 months being closed. And how do you explode in business, but you ain't explode in size or access to capital? And I got this mentorship session they're like, oh, you'll get a mentor. And I go and I click. I did not read the email, to be 100% honest. I clicked and I joined, and it's Lisa Price.
Wow.
And it was a life-changing kind of moment, because here I was in this moment thinking that I had set my business up to fail, and I had ruined us because we were growing. All these mixed feelings that you feel when you can't keep up with growth, which feels crazy, and nobody ever really talks about how difficult it is to do that, right? You're prepared for, people prepare you for failure. There's the conversations around that, but there's not a lot of conversation about growth and scale. And I find that's where a lot of us also, those are the two pitfalls of when we sink. And she went through this whole conversation about how difficult things were for her when growing and scaling Carol's daughter, and it was the most life-changing and forgiving conversation that I could ever bear witness to. And then the second person, this is gonna sound crazy. I grew up not knowing what entrepreneurship was, but around a whole bunch of entrepreneurs. So there was this guy in the building that managed my building. My mom was a single mom. My father unfortunately passed away when I was really young. And she had to work a lot. She was an operating engineer, first black woman in local for 15. And she would get jobs all around the city to do construction. And I would have to go after school to our management office. And there was a guy who was in the management office, and he was like, Jessica could sit here, do her homework with me. And this guy just so happened to also be starting a clothing brand with one of his friends. And I remember the last day he came to work, because he was like, hey, I'm leaving, our business is growing. And I remember him being in there and working on clothing and working on shirts. And the last day of his job, 4 big limos show up, and there's 4 guys, and they get out and he gives me and my mother a whole bunch of clothes and a whole bunch of items, and I'm looking at the branding and seeing how they didn't just put the logo on the front of the shirt, they put it in the t-shirt, they put it on the tag, the branding. It's kept an impact for me. And just recently, I was able to go to one of these guys who gave me the shirt, and he's like, you can do this too. And that guy who gave me that shirt was Damon John Hunt. And that was, they started Fubu. And I followed the story and the branding of Fubu, and that's kind of how I started and got into branding for Harlem Chocolate Factory. But I recently was able to meet with Damon John and speak to him, and he gave me a $25,000 grant during the pandemic for my business, so, and mentors me now. So it's like how it comes full circle, and it's absolutely amazing. And so those two people literally are like it.
Before you talk,
Sorry that was long-winded.
no, but I think it's so important because it's really important to be exposed to certain things in order for you to see it, because it really is true. If you can see it, then maybe I can be it, right? So thank you for sharing that. And I think the impact today and why there should really be no excuses is because now we can see people on social media and we can see YouTubes and podcasts. I mean, there's so much opportunity to see stories, and that's why content is so important. We have to use our voices. Ms. Robin.
I mean, what you just said is exactly describes the person that I was going to mention.
I knew that.
And that's my mother. She was a lawyer. My father was a lawyer. My sister was a lawyer. So for me, becoming a lawyer was not a stretch of the imagination. It was sort of, you know, the starting point. I think I talked to some of my friends in the neighborhood, and they described, you know, other roles that they were interested in. For me, going to law school was sort of the beginning. And my mother was a very petite, soft-spoken person, but she had a very good smile, and she had a lot of empathy. And she taught me a lot of leadership qualities and a lot of assertiveness that really comes in handy, I think, every day of my life now. But it was growing up watching that and seeing that, it really made a huge difference in my life. And you know, I appreciate having that on a daily basis. I didn't realize as a child that she grew up in Mississippi, the oldest of 5, and very poor community. It was very hard. Even thinking about the stories she talked about in Tulsa, and you know, episodes that happened in her life that I didn't have to face. So I was definitely.
I see you tearing, and you probably don't tear Walter, girl. Thank you for sharing that. I'm glad I talked about my dad because we've been getting. Oh no, David got a little love. Okay, so let's transition for a couple more minutes. Then I want to open up. Hopefully, someone has thought of an amazing question so that you can make the news tonight. Let's talk about men. Because as women, I know some of the folks that have helped me on my journey have been men. They have been amazing allies. Most of them have been white guys who have wanted nothing from me, but honestly just wanted, you know, to make sure that my hard work was seen. And so let's talk about men and the role that they can play and how they can help women in business or entrepreneurs. I would love to hear your assessment of that, or maybe some advice to some of the folks in the room who want to help some of us get a board seat, or, you know, whatever the case is, financing, funding, you know, be a mentor. Please, Jessica, go first.
Okay, well, I'll tell you the first, what changed the trajectory for Harlem Chocolate Factory. So I started the business 2015. I was in a local incubator. I joined the business plan competition, and I won New York Public Library. So it's kind of full circle to be here now. Won the New York Public Library's business plan competition back in 2015 for $15,000 to start my business. I had $12 in my account when I started, and I used that money and, like, you know, got this business started. And the first client that we had was Sam Adams. Jim Cook, the CEO, well, I know he's chairman, right? He took me under his wing. They invited me to a pitch competition, and I walked into the pitch competition, and I'm sitting there pitching against people who I own their cookbooks. So I'm like, why y'all brought me here to embarrass me in front of these people? I just won this, I won the business plan competition, but my entire business is theoretical at this point. I have a logo and a contact form, and they're over here asking me, you know, like, what's customer acquisition? And I'm like, well, I'm gonna go to a pop-up shop. You know? So I had none of that information whatsoever. And he was determined, but also polite. It like, he was like, these are the numbers that you have to know. Like, if you're working every day, figure these numbers out. And he took me under his wing and just gave me whatever information that I could use. And for that, in December, he ordered 250 gifts from us for his media kits and sent them to every single media partner he had. And I think that's the thing. It's like, oh, I heard about the chocolate factory. I saw y'all here. I saw y'all here. A lot of that comes from what Jeff did. And it was this, you know, he's this mega, there's literally no reason to pay attention to me whatsoever. And he just saw something in me and my business and took me under his wing. And we used that same Sam Adams model. Not specifically, but, you know, for how we are trying to grow, just not even our culture, but our operations. And it's been wonderful. And I think, like, it was so unexpected for me because I had only thought to, like, okay, I'm just trying to find a Black woman who can talk to me, but we are honestly kind of stretched thin by our own positions and the levels that we're trying to get to. And I couldn't find someone to mentor me. And he was like, doesn't matter, gotcha. And it's been, I think, really one of the most impactful things on me as a CEO and then also as an entrepreneur myself.
You know, there are two things about that I think are worth noting. One, we wouldn't have asked for that order had we not had that situation not happen.
Yeah.
Because we're taught not to step over our bounds, not to ask them, not to be assertive, right?
Yeah.
Work hard, keep your head down. No, I was like, listen, order 300 things that I can get started. And I think the other thing is that was nothing for him to do. It was nothing. It was easy. It was his assistant could make that order, but it was life-changing for you. And I think if people think like that, it's simple, just like for Carver Bank, you know, to deposit something small is still a deposit, and to tell their family and their community to do that is meaningful because there is an exponential outcome and factor to that one movement to get your community to do some things. So thank you for sharing that. I'm gonna call some people tonight and tell them what I need them to do. There's some people who won't, they don't even have to, they can just call their secretary and tell them to get it done.
Paul, if you're ever looking for a gift, I mean, the reality is, right? Absolutely. At the end of the year, everyone's getting the same chocolate. Give them something different.
And it doesn't have to be the end of the year, right?
It doesn't have to.
I hope you had a quote candy bar for people to curl up with.
Yeah, no, I think that changed for us dramatically, where people could no longer, you know, go on vacations and go, like, the idea of a premium chocolate was something that people were treating themselves. And yeah, you know, this resurgence in self-care. I want people to just eat better chocolate in general, like that's my goal. Yeah. But I think that people also saw, like, hey, let me do this thing for myself, and I feel a little different after this, you know, higher end bar than that thing that we get at the corner store. Yeah, no shade. Yeah. Listen, I'm recommending the Harlem Chocolate Factory. Okay. Yeah. Our 200 premiums we need on April 26th.
I think that what you described, you know, at the beginning about the staggering statistics as far as leadership of women is something that we really have to think long and hard about. I think that women supporting women is very important. I'm a member of a sorority too. My grandmother was a member of Delta Sigma Theta. I think it's really important that women support women, but I also think it's critical that men support women. And I think we really have to push men to support women. And I know that there are these stereotypes of, oh, I don't want to be seen as the man who is talking to women, and I don't want to be alone with women, or whatever fears you have. But I really think it's critical. Mentoring requires one-on-one conversations. It requires alone time. It requires really, you know, pushing and pulling. And I don't think we can do it alone as a society if women are only mentoring women and men are only mentoring men. I think that men have to take an interest in women in order for there to be that sponsorship, that support, and pulling people up so that we have a more equal society.
Yeah, and you know, I'm done so much thinking about this. You know, there's a really quick story. A young woman said, "Oh yeah, I've had this amazing mentor for 8 years, but why are you calling me then?" She's like, "Well, yeah, she talks about me in all these meetings, but why are you calling me? Because I'm not in your company." So clearly she's not the right mentor because she can't get it done for you. And it doesn't matter if she's mentioning your name when you're not there and all these things, you're still in the same position. So I always say, I want to champion. And oftentimes it's not us because we're not there where we need to be. And when we do get there, we have this mentality that there's only room for one. So we've been tricked into thinking if I allow someone else, that I might be in jeopardy. But I learned a long time ago that God has a reserved seat for me and nobody can have it unless I get up. So, Captain.
Oh, yeah, I would say definitely the same thing that had been said, but I think for me, kind of going back to being in a male-dominated, specifically a white male-dominated field, when I say the 2%, I often say for that 98% is me. And we can't do anything without that 98%. We don't even have the percentage to really make a difference. And so I would have to say that a lot of my success was based on the fact that one person in particular, very early in my career, saw something I didn't see in myself. And through that, started a mentorship, relationship that said, okay, Zita, you're here with your head down, focusing on X, Y, Z, but all of this is available to you. And I was so focused on what I could see and what I could reach was that I started getting in my own way. I gave him, excuses. Well, I don't want to do that because of this, and I don't want to do that because of that. But then he was like, okay, I'm going to give you an opportunity to finish what you said you want to do, and I'm going to come back in a year and give you this opportunity, give you another opportunity to see the Coast Guard from a larger point of view. So I was doing operations in the location, but what he offered me was to get an enterprise view of the organization and work for him at our headquarters. And that 2-year time period, that decision to do that really changed my whole career because I was not only this operator, but I was able to see the Coast Guard or see an organization regardless from a strategic level. And I started looking at everything that I did from that strategic level. While I was an operator grade, saving lives, making a difference, I was also understanding what that meant for us when it came to a budget, when it came to, personnel. And so that advocacy is paramount. And I'll go even further to say is to have that mentorship, but what has been very key for me, and it could be key for anyone in this position, in any position, was mentorship at different levels. So having a peer that doesn't look like me, be a mentor. Peer mentorship to me has been the most advantageous. You have that mentorship that's 2 or 4 years ahead of you, but then going to your point, you have that sponsorship and that champion that again speaks about you in rooms that you're not in. I feel like mentorship is something you should seek and ask, but sponsorship and champion is what you earn. And people have to understand that balance and work all of them. And one last thing, reverse mentorship. And that goes to the point about self-reflection and self-awareness. I need people younger than me to keep me relevant, keep me focused on what needs to be focused on. So I call it a sphere of mentorship, but it goes with reverse mentorship, peer mentorship, the traditional mentorship, and then championship and sponsorship.
Well,
So those are very key.
I have a 16 and 17-year-old I can ship to your house to. They're really, they're my boss. So, as we get ready to close, I just want to just say that clearly fear has no place in your residence, and your residence, nor my residence. And I think that's an important thing to mention. Questions? Any questions we have before we wrap up? Hopefully you enjoyed some of this conversation. You were able to stay awake. We didn't provide popcorn. Next time, chocolate. Come on now.
No.
Any questions for anyone? Yes. So you have to stand up and there's a mic in the back, but it's okay, just project. Yes.
When you feel like you're being disregarded and disrespected, first as a woman stepping up as black women, how do you respond in a way that shows it's not acceptable that you have strategic narrative that you as black women?
Right. So how do you stand up for yourself in an environment where you know somebody is not being respectful? What's your name? Catherine. Thank you for the question, Catherine. Did I? Yeah, right? Okay. Who wants to take that?
Me. Because I want us to dismantle our fear of looking like an angry black woman, because sometimes you're a black woman and you're angry. When you play with my money, I get upset. Every single time, when I respond to your email with the answer to what you said in the email, I get upset because can you read? Can I not read? What is it? Why are we on our first conversation about something that is beneath me? You are calling me about 20 items. I'm sorry, mister. I've fulfilled orders for Ilbra with 15,000 units. I'm not having conversations about 5 items that you're afraid because you want to check whether or not we have the capacity or the ability. How did you find out about us? So, do I need to yell? No, I call my girlfriends for that. But at the end of the day, the idea that you need to police yourself, dismantle that, because you don't. That idea that you could potentially be angry, like the trait, like what we could do, the traces of that, it goes to some things that are not healthy for us. You get to be angry, you get to be upset, you get to be happy, you get to be all those things, and no one gets to play with you at any time. And so sometimes you have to correct people. Men check each other all the time when they're in business. Excuse me, why are you playing around this? They just, like they don't play those games. You see them, they're in the boardroom, they'll slam the table, they'll do the thing, because you cannot play around the business that you're running. And if the business is the business of yourself, then that's what it is. But being very clear with people that you don't play. Now, is there a game that we have to play? Because people will use and utilize our feelings about who we are and what they think we are against us? Yes. But use that to your advantage. Be strategic, not just angry, right? But the idea that you're gonna police your emotion and not check someone for being disrespectful and disregard me, I'm gonna go around you every time.
So I'm gonna give you the corporate answer.
That's the entrepreneur. That's the entrepreneurial answer. Don't listen to me.
No. Because it's a great question, right? And so, over my 30-year career, I have probably been called angry a couple times. But what I've learned is that if I'm not able to get to where I need to be, then I can't reach back and help people. So yes, I have become an actress. Yes, I play the game. Yes, I never put anything in writing. I'll call somebody or meet them in the hallway. Because I don't want you to have a paper trail of what I really need to say to you in a way that is still respectful. But the number one tool that I've learned to use is to be the smartest person in the room. There is nobody that knows more about black women than me, and she is the most valuable employee and consumer in the world. So there is not one statistic. So when I sit at the table, I'm a powerful person because you need me to buy your products and services. I'm a better consumer than I am an employee. And when I learned that, then I became valuable. So people wanted me in the room. They valued my voice. Real quick story. I was working at Viacom. We were going through a really big reorg. I can say it at the time. McKinsey came into reorg. And so I did all this research on the McKinsey site. I looked, blah, 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 and McKinsey had this one research study like from 1999. It says that diverse employees, especially women, will help your revenue go up by 35%. So we finished the whole meeting and I said, but can I ask a question? Are you gonna reorg any black women out of the organization? Because your research said that when black women run the organization, profits go up. And they literally tried to put me in charge of the project, which my boss didn't allow happen. But the point is that, listen, be smart, know who you are, understand the data, use research. When you speak, have information, that's undeniable. And they're gonna look beyond everything else when you can add value to a conversation in a room. And then they want you in the room. You're gonna be able to add too.
Yeah, that's more money. But no, it is one of those things where you have to be the smartest in the room. And going back to self-awareness, is not be led by emotion. Because there were plenty of times where I became hot, you know, heart started beating, and then you're like, can't do what they may expect me to do. And not only kill them with kindness, but again, stay fact-based, you know? Because they'll say, oh yeah, waiting for her to be overly emotional for something. And then in my business, I cannot do that. I cannot do that. And so more along the lines of you is just, again, stay focused, be the smartest person in the room, and stay focused on the problem at hand. And pause. If you have to pause, take a break, do it, but don't think that those situations don't come, and sometimes come on a daily basis. But it's just, to me, I would rather prove someone wrong than prove them right when it comes to those things.
One little amendment. One little amendment, because I want to tell you that I have used being disregarded to my advantage several times. There are certain contracts and things that we've done because, like, people are not valuing what I bring to the table. And unfortunately, they start showing their hand. And I had a meeting this morning where we can tell, I mean, throughout this entire process, it's been a lengthy 2-year negotiation. And we got on the meeting this morning, and because they continue to disregard me and they clearly think less of me, but they made the mistake of telling me information that they absolutely should not have. And I'm going to use that to my advantage with our attorneys, and it's going to be amazing. And we're going to, like, it's really going to propel our negotiations forward because they were never supposed to tell me the figure. And when people are disregarding you, when people are not paying attention to you, sometimes you can, like, sometimes you just got to be the swift ninja. And we get off the phone, and Aisha and I call each other, and we're like, did they really just say that? And they're like, you know, are they just ignoring us? And, oh no, I'm not going to send you that paperwork. Like, why are you not sending me the paperwork? Like, but use it to your advantage. And sometimes, like, yes, we want to be seen and heard, but sometimes being the ghost, you get the information.
I think this is a really hard topic. Just because I feel like there's a lot of statistics and data out there about success and likability being positively correlated for men and not positively correlated for women, which means if women become more and more successful, the less liked we are. Well, that's generally the opposite for men. And a lot of that, I think, falls down to leadership. We're more comfortable with men having, being assertive and having strong leadership qualities than we are women. We expect women to be carers and givers and sharers. And so when we see someone who doesn't fit that stereotype, it might cause a negative reaction, which might not happen if the person is a different gender. So I think this is a really tough one. I think it's a really good question. I think it's something that you have to be mindful of. But I often feel like it's something that we can't always control because we live in a society that is somewhat where it's at, and it's not used to seeing women in the C-suite, seeing women running the chair and running the meeting. And it sometimes based on how we're raised and brought up might naturally cause a less positive reaction. But that doesn't mean don't do it. It just means that if you are characterized as an angry black woman, it might not be because you in fact actually are, but because you see someone speaking in front of a crowd and you naturally stereotype them as reverse qualities.
But you see she's dealing with statistics, right? So it's 7:15, so I just want to do one real quick thing. The women from Carver Bank that are in the room, anybody? Hi, because we didn't get to see you, so Michael said, say hi before we got a chance to see you. The second thing, I just want to thank Belinda, where are you? Thank you for your way up there. She was one of the folks that took really good care of us to make sure that we were pretty good. Will did too. Women take better care of us. I'm joking. And Carver Bank, you know, the reason that we're here today is to give homage to women, but understanding that Carver Bank put this on. They're serving their community, and we should make sure that we see them. So this was really not about us. We're here because they see us, and we appreciate Carver Bank seeing us, our accomplishment. So Jessica, you continue to be resilient, and good luck on your deal. Captain, you continue to be determined as you're going to, are you at the high, can you be a general? Are you at the highest you can be?
That would be the next.
General. So captain is like colonel in the Army, and admiral, right, okay, so we're gonna be watching that. And you continue, Robin, to fight for women, and I'm gonna continue to keep it real. I'm super authentic, and that's part of my journey. So thank you for coming. I guess we just can say, thank you guys. If there's anybody out there who wants to help us on our journey, we're absolutely open to meeting you and understanding how that can happen. I am that person who will ask for that order. But thank you for coming. I don't know if anybody wants to, or we just say goodbye and then we'll see you guys outside. Okay, great. Thank you guys for coming. We appreciate you.
Do your testimonials.
Oh yeah, so listen, when you go outside, they're gonna capture your testimonial just about, you know, the Carver Bank's 75th anniversary. We already gave ours, so make sure you give it as you go outside. Anything else I missed? That's it. All right, so make sure you give your testimonial so they can use that to expand and grow their mission. All right, there you go.